Hi there, I'm IRK, and this is my channel, Get IRK'd. In this episode, Waste Management. Can this stock clean up your dirty portfolio? Before we get started, if you could smash the like button and hit subscribe, it really helps me out. Thank you so much. In this episode of Investing In, we're going to be looking at Waste Management, ticker symbol WM. Waste Management provides, waste management services to the country, including residential, commercial, and industrial customers throughout the entire nation. The company operates solid waste landfills, hazardous waste landfills, recycling centers, transfer stations, and more. While it might not look like it on the surface, Waste Management is actually an excellent play on the infrastructure bill coming up. The United States is looking at spending billions of dollars to renovate roads, highways, bridges, and more. When you do construction, you produce a lot of trash, and you need a company like Waste Management to come in and clean things up afterward. Additionally, Waste Management makes a pretty amazing ESG play because they're developing ways to capture carbon and methane from landfills and turn it into renewable natural gas. I'm going to start by taking a look at Waste Management's fundamentals, then I'll show you where the stock has come over time. I'll give you a buying plan of where you would start if you didn't already hold shares, and I'll show you where my position has developed since the beginning of 2021. First up, you can see that Waste Management has a market cap of $67 billion, making it a very decently sized company. And despite the stock's excellent performance year to date, it still sports a 1.44% dividend yield, paying $2.30 per share annually, which is really tempting for an industrial play. However, one of the biggest strikes against the stock is it has a price to earnings ratio of 38.89. When you're looking at a tech growth stock, it's starting to look overvalued when it reaches over 20. So for an industrial to be this high up, it is considered overvalued by most metrics, including Yahoo Finance. Another strike against the stock is that analysts give it a one-year price target of $164.73, which is less than 3% from its current stock price. However, if you're like me and you believe in the outperformance of this stock over time, that price target isn't really relevant when it comes to investing for the long term. However, you should still take note because it means that if we see a period of volatility in the stock market, it is possible that Waste Management could get hit significantly harder than other industrials in the sector. In order to blow through that $164.73 price target, Waste Management is going to need to continue to outperform so that it can maintain its lofty valuations. However, I think it can do that. Now let's take a look at Waste Management on a chart. Let's start by drawing a Fibonacci retracement from the bottom of the pandemic to its recent high. Fibonacci was a mathematician who saw patterns that occurred in nature in pine cones and seashells, and oddly enough, these patterns also seem to repeat themselves in the stock market. Now, typically, a Fibonacci retracement will give us levels of support where we might be able to add to a position, but as you can see, this particular Fibonacci retracement isn't giving us good levels since the support that we've seen in the past is higher than the levels that you see from the Fibonacci retracement, so we're going to draw a new one from its last bottom. Going from this point of a low to the all-time high, you can see now we've got much better support when we're looking at our Fibonacci retracement, so this is what we'll use in creating a buying plan. Waste Management recently hit an all-time high of $164.82, but when it reported earnings in late October 2021, people were disappointed because of the supply chain constraints, the possibility of an infrastructure bill being delayed, and other factors that were affecting the company, and it sold off, making a bottom here at $154.01. If you wanted to be aggressive about getting into the position, you might shoot for a little bit higher, maybe even here at $155.40. From here, I'd look for the September sell-off low as support, and I'd go a little bit higher than the absolute low at $147.90, or round that up just to $148. From there, you can see that the 38.2% retracement at $143.54 has provided support in the past, and you can see there was a significant pull down right here at $142.24. So that might make an interesting third buy. Moving on from that, you can see that we have the 200-day moving average at $138.26. So you could either use that or you could use the 50% retracement down around $137. As you can see in the past, it has provided significant support. Personally, I'd probably split the difference and use this pullback here at $137 $47.62 as my fourth buy. From there, you could either go down to the 61.8% retracement at $130.39, where you can see that there's a little bit of price action in the past, or if you were feeling more aggressive, you can see there was significantly more price action up here, with a price target around $133.89. After that, you can see that there's support here at $127.94, followed by support at the 78.6% retracement, $121.03, pretty much on the dot, with this level having a low of $121.14. Whereas normally I would say that I would start with a 50% allocation and then buy in 10% increments on the way down. Because waste management is kind of overvalued and near its all-time high, I would actually start with a 25% allocation, but still buy in 10% increments on the way down. If you followed this plan with the 7 buys that I have, you would have an 85% allocation if it reached its bottom at $121.14. This would leave you an additional 50% of cash to be able to allocate should it see a very significant sell-off. However, it's worth keeping in mind, just for it to get down to our 7th price target, it would have to sell off significantly more than 25%, with a negative 26.46% from the high to our last price target. Could it actually sell off that much? Well, let's take a look at what it did during the pandemic sell-off. During the pandemic sell-off, a significant black swan event, Waste Management sold off 32.69% from its high to its low. So I wouldn't use anything lower than a 32.69% target now, since even if we had a black swan event, the likelihood of it selling off lower than that is very slim. A 32.69% sell-off from Waste Management's current highs gives us a price target of $110.94. So I would use that as my 8th buy and then save the 5% cash that hadn't been allocated in case we see something really extreme and it sells off even more. But in all likelihood, that 5% probably won't ever be put to work. In fact, I wouldn't even expect the 10% to be put to work, so at most we'd have an 85% allocation in this position. Now let's take a look at my own position and how I've built it over time since January of 2021. I made my first buy in Waste Management on January 14th of 2021 at $114.78 per share. On January 27th, I made my second buy at $112.11 per share, which gave me a per share cost of $113.89. I made my third buy on February 22nd when Waste Management dipped below $110 a share, with a buy at $109.53, which gave me a per share cost of $112.80. From there, you can see that Waste Management really took off. And unfortunately, when it started consolidating around the 140s, I decided it was time to take profits, which ended up being a poor decision. I took profits on July 15th with a sell at $144.74, and it lowered my per share cost to $101. However, after Waste Management continued higher, I realized that I had made an error and that I instead wanted a bigger allocation in the portfolio. So on September 9th, I made my fourth buy at $154.15, which raised my per share cost up to $104.60. On October 1st, I made my fifth buy at $148.45, which gives me my current per share cost of $114.60, a profit of 39.82%. And as much as I hate doing it, I have plans to buy even more above my per share cost so that I will be raising my per share cost but also increasing my allocation, as I think the likelihood that it will sell off to $114 is very slim. I'm hoping Waste Management will pull back a little bit further than it did at the end of October. My price target is around $150.94. It's important to remember that when it comes to a stock like this, you can always buy more often but in smaller quantities. Waste Management has a tendency not to sell off that much. It's quite a stalwart and holds up during market sell-offs. With that said, I always like keeping powder dry so that I can add more to my position when it does sell off in case something that I didn't anticipate happens and the stock sells off more significantly. I do have many buys below this level. Also, if you're an investor with a smaller portfolio and you can't afford to buy several shares or even one share at a time, Waste Management is one of those stocks that you can buy in fractional quantities. For me, between its long-term prospects with the infrastructure bill, its dividend yield, and its outperformance, Waste Management is an awesome long-term portfolio position, and I'm going to hold this one for as long as I can. Thank you for watching. Please hit like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next episode.